distance in your eyes. Oh no, I said too much. I set it up. That's me in the corner. That's me in the spotlight, losing my...
So going back to my question, where we have a context where something is really wrong, you take into account the actions being carried out, the thoughts that might be carried out, the person's intention, all of that, given that circumstance where something would be really wrong, on what basis would we have to say that it would really be wrong or really be right?
There's two bases that come to mind immediately for me. One would be my own personal judgment, and the other would be a societal judgment. So in other words, I may look at it and say, this is really wrong, but society may deem that what they did is okay, and therefore it's not enforced. What I think is wrong is not enforced and irrelevant to anyone but me. But
okay,
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Okay, this is what I would say to that both of those things would be arbitrary standards for arbitrary reasons.
And that's why you have arbitrary rules that are different around the globe. That's why no two societies have the same standards of law and morality.
It's about increasing your understanding and determining which goals and values you want and which ones are better for yourself and for society. For example, I would say that one of the things that I would consider to be a moral absolute is that it is morally wrong everywhere, at all times, for one human being to own another human being as property. That this always was wrong, even if societies didn't recognize it's wrong. And how can I say that? Because I am the ultimate judge of what I consider to be right and wrong. I am evaluating their moral standards according to my own and saying, no, I'm sorry, I realize you guys thought this was moral, but I say that this is absolutely immoral. Now, if there are other people that agree with me, great. Then we can begin, creating
social change or whatever you want,
and begin to change the world around us.
Or go set up your own country where there's not slavery.
Hopefully, we're constantly getting better at this.
Right.
But I would say that owning another human being is wrong and always has been, even if they wouldn't recognized.
Okay, but like I said, the logical conclusion to all this is that what is said to be right and wrong is not really right or wrong.
Correct.
It's just arbitrarily right or wrong for arbitrary reasons. It could be wrong yesterday, then we could change our mind. Society could change our mind, or I could change my mind and be right today.
There's a difference between arbitrary and variant. Okay, you can have very good reasons for why you decide something is right or wrong. I don't know that it's arbitrary.
But people can have different reasons, so therefore...
Yes, that's correct. But when I think of arbitrary, I tend to think of what you were saying before, that, oh, you could just do this, you could just do that. And really, there is a certain biological function in your head that is a social animal that wants you to have a cohesive society. So there's going to be a biological drive in your head as a social animal that's going to make you want to create a system where...
Yeah, now you're pointing to something else, saying that there's some standard saying that my biological nature is what determines real morality, real right.
I'm saying that it...
standard that you haven't provided.
No, I'm saying that it impacts your desire as a social animal.
Well, why should I listen to it just because it's my desire?
Because you can't survive as a single human
being.
being.
Now you're begging the question. You're assuming I need to survive as opposed to not survive.
No, if you don't want to survive, it doesn't matter. I agree.
Well, some people don't want to.
That's fine. Then they don't need the social construct.
Morality still.
The standard is determined by the being and by the society.
Okay, we've already gone over that.
And what's the problem with it? I don't know what it is you want to get to. The fact that you...
The problem is that there's no real rights and no real wrongs that people are really accountable to.
I agree.
Right and arbitrary wrongs for arbitrary reasons.
I agree. There is no innate right and wrong absolutes that exist irrespective of a thinking viewpoint.
Correct.
I agree.
Correct.
Okay, so everybody in the world who tries to claim to be a moralist is really just using a word like blah, blah. You go around and saying, I'm a blah, blah, and we don't really know what that even means or why we should be blah, blah.
Curiously, you and I and Tracy can have a conversation about this, so clearly it's not equivalent to blah, blah.
According to my worldview, we're created in the image of God, and we have a moral compass.
How do you know that?
Within us.
That makes no sense.
Well, my worldview is more consistent than yours because that's the practicality.
How can that be consistent?
Okay,
how can that be consistent?
because that's the practicality of the way the world works. And you're proving that that's the case because you're saying that it's innate within you to have your nature to want to survive.
But here is the problem. It's also innate in other social animals, but it's less innate in non-social animals. Why is it that when you breed something like a Siberian fox to become more social, it gains what we would label as more...
Okay, so why is it that animals can eat each other, but yet if I go eat children for the fun of it...
Now, wait a second. We have an animal, a Siberian fox, that is a solo animal. This is a solo animal. It's not a social animal. You can breed this animal to be more passive, and in doing so, it actually breeds a more social variant of that animal. The social variant is more prone to social interaction with people and other animals.
Okay, Dave, you're begging the question that animals or living organisms need to survive as opposed to not survive.
No, I'm not. No, I'm demonstrating that you can breed morality into an animal.
Hang on. Cameron, please. There's no question begging here. There are two possibilities. Either the species has survival as a goal, or it does not. If it does not, then it doesn't matter.
Nothing.
If it does, you better let me finish, or I swear I'm going to hang up on your ass.
I don't care.
Me neither. The other option...
See, if you don't care if you survive...
Yeah, if you don't care if you survive,
matter.
Piss off. The other option is that survival does matter, and therefore it becomes a basis. However, I'm just going to go ahead and preemptively jump to what you wanted to get to, which is that there must be some divine author of a moral code. Well, first of all, there is no universal moral code. Second of all, let's take a look at that situation. And the Euthyphro dilemma is particularly useful for this. Is something moral because God says so, or does God say so because it's moral? If the first one is true, something becomes moral because God said so, that's divine command. That is morality by fiat. And all you've done is shifted the supposed arbitrary, in your verbiage, decision about what's right and wrong from us to this authority, which is, by the way, what we do when we shift from the individual to society. But you're shifting it to some nebulous God who curiously happens to agree with you. But all you've done is taken what would have been arbitrary and shift the arbitrary nature up to something else. There is no absolute morality in divine command theory. There is no absolute morality. It is just one step removed from our subjective assessment. If the opposite is true, that God says something because it's moral, then there is some moral absolute standard, but God is now irrelevant. Your divine author supposedly is not the author. He's the messenger boy, which means that we should be able to determine these standards without his guidance. Now, in one case, you don't have moral absolutes, and in the case where you do, your God, supposed author, is not the author and is irrelevant. When we go around to make assessments, by the way, how did you come to the conclusion that God is the good one? I ask that. Obviously, you're not still on the line, and there's no reason to call back because you don't get through again today, guaranteed. How did you make that assessment? Well, you could say, and I'm sure you would, as most apologists do, that God has written a moral code in your heart that lets you know what is good, so you were able to recognize good. But you're talking about a super being. And if I'm a super being who determines what's right and wrong and I stick it in your heart, then you're going to think that I'm whatever I tell you to think that I am. In actuality, you have used your own moral standards to assess the claims within the religion to determine which claims are consistent with your understanding of morality and said, that's the good one. You are exercising your morality the same way everybody else is. Own up to it. Take a little credit for it. You know why you don't? Because I don't think you exercise it to the same extent that other people do. I think you buy into cheap arguments from authority, like the ones you tried to spew here. I think you buy into fallacies, and by the way, if you go around saying, that's question begging, it's question begging, when it's not, you look like a tool. The argument that Tracy was making had nothing to do with saying, ooh, here's the ultimate standard, it's biological. It was very simple, and she explained it. There's two possibilities. Either survival is something you're looking for, or survival is not something you're looking for.